We saw that car the next day.
It was after the private wreck, not on film.
No.
Private wreck.
Private wreck.
To Moss Striner's car.
We still had to complete that whole segment. Had to use the car. Was it George and you, or George and Jack, figured out, I must have been George, the angle of the shot, because I was in that car and they said, what we want you to do is just angle that car down the road and just pull off beside the tree. We did it once.
Yep.
One take. I think it's one of the best. You'd never know that that car had been injured. It was I love that scene. So that's how we covered up Gary's crashing of the car.
You might remember that Barbara, Johnny had the keys.
That's right.
So Barbara, in her quick-wittedness, released the handbrake. Now we get to why did we choose this particular spot to park the car? Well, we parked it because we knew at the end of the scene, Barbara was going to have to release the handbrake, and Bill Heinzman would chase after her. That's why we parked on the grade, so the car would drift automatically.
And we actually did that. There was no engine going, it was just a release of the brake. Now, had Barbara been driving the car, if any of you did see us yesterday drive this vehicle, the entire movie would never have gone.
She was a hero. This Moss Striner's car was a stick shift. This is a modified, it's got a beefed up engine and probably clutch and transmission. Where are the owners? They can probably tell us what's in it.
I love it.
They were.
Yay!
Oh yeah, there's George right there. At any rate, I was having a little bit of trouble yesterday with first gear and not stalling out. She gets in it and drives it like a champ. That's a whole different movie. Maybe what we ought to do is start over again from the beginning. Johnny is the passenger, and Barbara is, I don't know, maybe there's something there.
Did you bring any candy?
There is candy.
We do. It's still in the cars.
By the way, that's we wanted that to be a surprise for you, but there is a bag of candy.
Do we have any wonderful other questions?
So is this where you crashed the car? Did you actually crash it into a tree down here?
No, it was actually crashed along that section.
Yeah.
Those trees were closer to the, a little bit closer.
It started off drifting down and making the turn, but then the car was brought back up around this way, so there
we
was
were actually driving
a better
it
shot
was under power at that point.
Right. So you can never tell what kind of tricks movies are going to play on you.
Did Johnny and Barbara ever have a last name?
No.
Never.
Nope.
Want to make one up?
Yeah, it's whatever you want it to
We
be.
can start a whole new thing, go on for generations. It was John and Barbara Mitchell.
I'll post it on Facebook.
Johnny and Barbara never had a last name, nor did anybody ever truly figure out what started the whole phenomenon in the beginning. How or why the recently dead came back to life. There were plenty of theories, but nobody knows for sure.
But didn't they say in the movie, though, that a spacecraft had come back?
But that was conjecture. It was never resolved finally that it was radiation. You and I both know it was radiation.
Of course.
The last name should be whatever grave you were visiting. Wasn't it Clyde Lewis Myers?
Yes.
True.
Yeah,
Yes, it would be Myers.
There you go.
Barbara.
See?
Rob, would
Sharp
you?
mind of a fan.
Yeah. Would you
Of
do
a
me a
Goober
favor?
fan.
Would you see if you can find a tombstone that says Kaczynski? That's a private joke between us, because Rob Lucas is great for pulling practical jokes on Johnny and Russ Streiner.
Russ, I have a question.
Any
Sure.
other questions?
Yes.
Did you choose, since you were playing so many different, wearing so many different hats in the production, did you choose to play Johnny so that you'd kind of you wouldn't have to be on camera as often?
No, it was kind of an amorphous decision as to how Johnny, who would play Johnny. The real brutal truth of the matter is, we had all the other production details figured out. And the cemetery day was to be the first day of filming. And we screwed around, and we still didn't have a Johnny. And I think it was out of default almost that George and Jack said, well, why don't you play Johnny? By the way, John Russo was originally supposed to play the cemetery zombie. And that didn't work out because he was working on the film crew. And the last day of filming, we had Bill Heinzman. At the last moment again, Bill Heinzman filled in. So the concentration of the film was about the farmhouse. And we kind of neglected the cemetery scene a little bit, but it was a very last minute decision. You play Johnny.
So you grabbed Barbara through the door before you had actually done the cemetery scene?
No, this scene was the very first day of filming. There were a total of 30 days of filming. 2 of them happened here. The other 28 happened at the house, and 1 in Washington, D.C., and then the basement of the house, which was in an office building in Pittsburgh. So we already knew what was going to happen, but when Johnny came to get Barbara out of the house, there was still another filming day here at the cemetery.
Judith, did you ever hurt yourself doing your own stunts?
No, and the very first fall was by accident. I came whipping around the corner and just took a slide. Because of that, George had to write in, and that was one of the scenes we came back to the cemetery to do in the fall. We had to do a pickup in order for me to lose my other shoe, so that I would be barefoot. That's how that all came about.
And then Ben finds a pair of shoes for her in the closet inside.
Which were my real paint shoes that I brought.
Thank you.
Yes.
Was it your idea for the gloves?
The gloves were my idea, and the reason for the gloves is because I knew when Johnny... Has everyone here seen Night of the Living Dead? So we're not spoiling anything for anybody.
That was nice of you.
Oh, Rob Lucas, of course, has not seen the film. Because we knew when Johnny came back later in the film, I wanted to give him a wardrobe signature. His glasses were gone, and I wanted to give him a signature. So I decided on the driving gloves as a wardrobe mechanism, and that's why why I made such a big deal out of pulling them on.
In the car.
Both in the car, and then made sure that they were featured in Johnny's lines, which, by the way, were shot over in here. Barbara and Johnny's lines were shot over in here, but the complexion or the contour of the cemetery has changed considerably because the trees that provided our canopy for filming are now gone. There was a tornado here in the mid-'80s, and those trees were destroyed.
Was there anything, either during filming or even post-production, was there anything where you watched it through and you just, would have done it different, or maybe, was there a different way was there anything that I don't want to say regret, but just something that you would have done differently?
Yeah, I would have gotten a new Johnny. No, I'm teasing.
Boy, you'd be down to hell.
What was that?
I said, boy, you'd be down to hell.
There you go. You do a great line, actually.
Yeah, that was good.
Since the notoriety for the film came much after the film was made and even released, what did you do right after filming of the film was completion, both of you? What was your next job? Did you go back to Hollywood, Judith? What did you do right after filming was complete?
What I did was stick around Pittsburgh. I decided I'd marry for the second time. I'm not good at marriage. I am no longer, and haven't been for at least 7 decades. But I thought I'd try it again. And at that time, I ended up having my little girl Jenny. When she was just a wee one, we moved back to California. And I did my best to get back into theater and film out there, which I was lucky enough to do.
Russ, what did you do after completion of the film, as far as?
Immediately, well, you do know that George and John Russo and I, we all worked together in a production company called The Latent Image. Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman had a production company called, an audio production company called Hardman Associates. And so we went back to do our normal jobs. As a matter of fact, of the 30 days of filming on Night of the Living Dead, that was broken into 2 clusters of 15 days each, because we had to take a break to go back and service our commercial clients who were getting somewhat impatient with us because we were tied up shooting a real movie. But they wanted their TV commercials to be done and so forth, so we took a break from beginning to end. The first day of filming was in June of that year of '67, and the last day was like right around the early part of October. So 30 days of that was taken up with filming, and the rest of it was a break while we addressed other business matters. And Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman did the same thing. So what I did immediately afterwards is that John Russo and I started to immediately, while the editing was being done, to start promoting the film. That now we've got this thing, we know it's finished, we know we've got it in the can, and that's when we started in early '68 to start letting the world know that we had a movie that was about to come out.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
The road that you were running on when you did stumble, was that near the farmhouse?
I stumbled once at the farmhouse.
The original shot right after...
When you're running along the
When
road.
you're running out of the woods. Yeah, right when you came out of the woods and you're running down that road,
That's
center of the
where
road.
that's
that was
where I
near the
fell.
farmhouse, that road.
Yeah.
And we always wonder where that road was.
Actually, I believe that first fall was as I had already gotten to the farmhouse and came around the corner to get to the door. Yeah.
You fell once in the cemetery, too. Yeah,
That was the first.
Yeah, that was the very first fall.
You know, the very first shot we did was running through the woods, and I remember that. But then we also did a shot, if you recall, Barbara's running down a road. George Romero was in the trunk of a Lincoln Continental, I think, somebody's Lincoln Continental.
Carl Hardman.
Was in the top was up in the trunk, and there he was, and there I was running, and we just went down that road forever. It was great.
For anybody who isn't aware, movies, when they're made, are almost never shot in sequence. It's a little bit here, and a little bit here, and a little bit here, and then it's all put together in editing and post-production. And it's a real challenge to keep all of that in mind. Oh. And George was particularly good at keeping those little details in mind.
Continuity, what they call it.
Actually, it was so good because I always thought that the farmhouse location was right there. Yeah. I'm looking, on Google Earth or whatever. You look at it.
Yeah.
That's where it has to be because she didn't run all that long.
Well, it's funny because a lot of the locals will come up to me and they'll go, you can't go the way they go.
And every time he meets one of those locals, I heard this story yesterday, he turns around and says, you're a local.
For those of you who are from Pittsburgh, I'm the chairman of the board of the Pittsburgh Film Office, which is the office that attracts movie production to Pittsburgh. And going way back to a movie that Gary worked on, Flashdance. To this day, people will watch Flashdance and they'll say, you know, I really didn't like that movie. Well, why didn't you like it? It was pretty popular. Because there was no way that girl could get from where riding her bicycle. There's no way that that movie could. Well, you know, it's called suspension of disbelief.
I love that.
Your dancing was great.
Yeah.
Backbreaking.
Judith?
Yes.
You're just talking about the scene where you run and you stumble and you drop your shoe. That's a really commonly parodied moment.
Isn't
How do you
it?
feel when you see that in other things where they poke a little fun at it?
I'm amazed. I know I use that word a lot, but one thing also about that is people will say, you were the original Scream Queen. Yeah. And I sort of get, I don't think I really screamed as much as I yelled in terror. And yet so many times people will say, oh, you screamed your head off in that film. I'll have to watch it again to see if that's true or not.
For each of you, your favorite scene.
Oh, wow.
Oh. G-Man Christmas.
Gary's involves a meat hook, I know that.
You know, I would have to say, I don't know that I've ever been asked that before.
That's wild.
I would have, yeah, no, I
I
don't
don't know what to ask you anymore. I know all these things.
I would probably say it's when Johnny comes back to get Barbara, because it has to be either that, and I hate to say favorite in this context, but the movie had to end the way it ended with Dwayne Jones getting shot. But probably my favorite would be the turning point in the story where Barbara has been yearning for Johnny. We have to get to Johnny. Johnny has the keys and so forth. And voila, Johnny is there, but not exactly the way Barbara had in mind.
Mine, if I may, is that wonderful little scene when Barbara comes into one of the rooms in the house and sees the music box. The way George filmed it, he was down on the ground filming, and to see just Barbara's eyes for that moment, that second, I thought was one of the most artistic shots in the film.
When Johnny comes back to the farmhouse, you know, pulls Barbara out the door and all that, he doesn't have his glasses. So doesn't the zombie scene, or did he just follow the zombie crowd and do what they did?
Yeah, he was just following other zombies, and then he picked up on the scent of Barbara and knew where he was going. What kind of a question?
Technical detail.
Pete, you had a question.
There you go.
I don't think there's a better name than Johnny.
We were thinking about calling him Pete.
Yeah, right. That's why he said that right.
In fact, I named my son John, although I've never called him Johnny in his entire life.
Are there any other questions? And this is now the honor system, the part of the tour that involves the honor system. Have any of you ever said to anyone else, or have you thought, they're coming to get you, Barbara? Is there, and have this happened frequently? Okay, now when we go back to Edco Park, Gary has a thing right near the front entrance. It's called Johnny's Tip Jar. Every time you have said or thought they're coming to get you, Barbara, you drop a quarter in Gary's tip jar.
And what you have just learned is don't commit to anything until you know the entire reason.
Seriously, any further questions? Would you like us to get in the car so you can take some pictures?
Well, hold on. Let's do the photo op thing
Yes.
first.
Oh.
And I'm gonna ask you to all move back, because we're gonna move the car back, and you guys can stand in front of the car.